Welcome back. Beautiful day out here. And today, you could already see on the screen, we're going to talk today about Netflix versus the UFC. Now, unless you've been living on the rock or, just somehow not caught up with the news, we understand that we have a big promotion coming up soon with Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano. And I do apologize, my face covering the lovely ladies up here. Mike Perry versus Nate Diaz, and Francis Ngannou versus Lins. Now, this is a fun matchup. This is a fun card. I may be the few. I think it's not even actually a few. I think a lot of people actually like this card more than what's going to coming up on that same day, which I will get to by the end of this video. Now, this is a big example of what is going on now in a big shift of the MMA world. Obviously, as we understand, Jake Paul is the one that's currently being, I guess you could say, the business side of things. He has have a recent, in the past couple years, trying to be going toe-to-toe against Dana White for a lot of the fighters' pay, a lot of the media, as well as been pretty much the biggest showcase in boxing, having his fight against Anthony Joshua, against Mike Tyson. I mean, let's be honest, this boy know how to put on a show. And he's been extremely well going around the media, talk to big type people, even being endorsed by the president. I'm not trying to get political here and everything, but man, beside all the stuff he has done, he is business-wise smart. And he understood one thing. Because he has been partnered with Netflix, he pitched a great idea on having a big, and this is probably going to be one, if not the biggest UFC viewership since Conor versus Khabib. This, just because one, Netflix is a very powerful streaming service. Almost everybody has Netflix. All right. And granted, maybe the headlines of these fights aren't going to be top tier skill. Let's just be realistically honest with us. Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano. Gina Carano hasn't fought in well over a decade since her last loss. All right. Ronda Rousey, same thing. Both of them retired on a loss. They haven't fought in well over a decade. They're way past their prime. Nate Diaz versus Mike Perry. Both of them were journeymen in the UFC. They're never going to be in any title contention, but both of them had big names. Obviously, Mike Perry being a phenomenal bare knuckle. I mean, he runs bare knuckle. And I love that for him, that he found a far better and well-sustaining career outside of the UFC. Nate Diaz, obviously the Diaz brother, beloved, one of the biggest UFC, definitely a legend in terms of maybe had not accomplished everything. He was a 2-1 fighter, but he was always game. He was always fighting who's who, and his biggest fight coming against beating Conor McGregor. And then we have Francis Ngannou versus Lins. Unfortunately, obviously Francis the lineal champ, but they couldn't get him a proper, better matchup just because all the heavyweights, let's just be honest, are in the UFC. And the heavyweights is just in general abysmal. It's very bad. There is no good heavyweight fighters out there except like 2. All right, Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gane. And Francis obviously left. But good for Francis, he's making the bag. However, I do want to cover on this one page other fights that I'm really excited about. Dos Santos versus Robeli Despine. He was already in the UFC, was really bad. And they gave him an old man Dos Santos, which I don't like to see JDS. He's just so old, man. But hey, I guess when money calls, that's all you need. All you know is fighting. That's all you gotta do. Another great fight is this, the one that I think a lot of people, I guess more if you're in the real know, it's the Muhammad Mokaev versus Adriano Moraes. Now, Moraes is a big name because he did knock out Demetrius Johnson. He was a former flyweight champ out there at ONE FC. He was gone as a free agent, and I guess he got picked up with a good amount of money. Mokaev, obviously, he was undefeated, and UFC dropped him for personal issues behind doors. But hey, that's a great matchup. I like that matchup. And this kind of is a little bit of a hint that if Netflix continue this way, just maybe it could rival UFC in organization, or at least put in the pressure that UFC is like, hey, you need to start paying your fighters better or putting the better shows, because if not, they will have other extra avenue to make better money and a better opportunity to get viewerships. Look, this is Netflix handling it. All right, Netflix is a far better streaming service than Paramount. And if they do this right, moving forward, they could put in a real problem against UFC. Because recently, I will make a video about this after the Israel Adesanya vs. Joe Pyfer, which is the quarter review of the Paramount era. Every quarter, I'm going to give my review and my thoughts on how the UFC is. Let's just be honest here. The UFC is not looking good at all. But the next quarter is looking pretty promising. All right, the Jerry versus Oberg, the White House card. Conor might be coming back in international, and Islam in August. We'll see. Those are big, prominent names. And Sean Strickland versus Khamzat. So we got about 4 back-to-back months that we might see a momentum shift towards the end of the year. But moving forward, kind of want to go through each fight real quick. Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano. I don't like this fight. It's just going to be a bad fight. They're both older fighters. Obviously, Ronda Rousey, horrible striking. Gina definitely has a bit more veteran experience in the striking, but let's just also be honest. She is way past her prime. She's in her 40s. Ronda Rousey is in her late 30s, and they haven't fought well over a decade. I mean, obviously, both of them are pioneers in the women MMA division. And seeing this happening, I'm like, I don't know how I feel about it. Ronda Rousey is obviously going to win. That's just no brainer. There's nothing that Gina could possibly do to Ronda Rousey. She's not stronger. She's not better in terms of experience. Ronda Rousey, obviously a gold Olympic judo, far better athlete. I mean, she has been kind of busy with the WWE, but she has lost her fights, her last 2. And Gina came from last also. This is like way past many years. Ronda Rousey should clearly win this. I think she's going to beat Gina in the first round unless they milk it to the 3rd or 4th or 5th round. I don't know how they're doing it. Oh, 5-by-5. So they're doing all 5 rounds. I don't think it's going to go all 5 rounds. I just don't think so. Nate Diaz versus Mike Perry. This is actually one that's a sleeper fight because both of them are very similar. You're not going to see any type of wrestling in this. You're going to see them fight, and it's 5 rounds. This is going to favor a lot Nate Diaz. Obviously, better cardio, lasts longer. But Mike Perry is a lot more durable. Nate Diaz is going to sleep him. But this is a pick-em fight. The only reason I say that is because Mike Perry has been more active in the bare knuckle. And Nate Diaz has barely been doing boxing. He was iffy, right? His loss against Jake Paul. He beat Jorge. But ever since then, he hasn't really And allegedly, UFC were trying to bring Nate Diaz back. But I don't get it. Sometimes a fighter has a problem of just staying retired, maybe because of money issues. That's all they know. But Nate Diaz isn't someone that I'm going to be very excited to see him fight again. All right, let's be honest here. From his recent fights since Conor McGregor, has he won an exciting fight matchup against a prominent opponent? The last one he beat, in which his last fight was against Tony Ferguson, and that's because it was a late-minute switch-up. He was supposed to fight Khamzat. They were sending Nate Diaz straight to their slaughterhouse. Khamzat would have literally done things to him that I don't think it should be aired on TV. But Mike Perry is a lot more durable. They might not even wrestle. Nate Diaz definitely had the better jiu-jitsu. In terms of technical aspect, definitely the better boxer. Nate Diaz is overall the better fighter than Mike Perry. But is he been active enough compared to Mike Perry, who is just an absolute dog? Granted, his boxing fight against Jake Paul was not good. That boy got finished. But hey, it is what it is. I am going to favor with Mike Perry in this fight. I just think he's just been more active, more durable. But we will see. I think it's going to be a fun matchup. It's going to be a bloody war. Next up, Francis Ngannou versus Felipe Lins. Francis is going to kill this guy. We might see live murder on TV. It is what it is. I don't see anything that Felipe could bring in. His jiu-jitsu, bad. All right, what are you going to do with a guy who's almost 300 pounds laying on top of you? Nothing. All right, Francis hits you, you're gone. You're dead. You're up in the void. This is, well, one, shout out to Francis making the money. Love that for him. You keep going, dog. Felipe Lins, sorry that you had to be a sacrifice, but it is what it is. Netflix is trying to put an exciting show because obviously the main event is not going to be it. So this shouldn't even be a 5-by-5. This should just be a 1 round. Why not do it not Pride rules? 10-minute round. Fuck it. But I like this fight. It's just going to be quick and easy. Definitely a one to sit down. Felipe gets knocked out. You stand up, go take a piss, whatever. Good fight. Next one. This is the one I'm really, really excited about. Mohamed Mokaev versus Adriano Moraes. Very technical aspect. Obviously, it's just the typical, Russian Dagestani versus the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling. Versus jiu-jitsu, Samo versus jiu-jitsu. It's that type of background thing. Look, first of all, both of them can make a big name in themselves in here. Whether or not Netflix decides to continue with the MVP, is a great showcase for if they decide to hypothetically go to the UFC after this. I don't know if UFC will pick them up. I like them to pick up Adriano Moraes. I really do. He's not in his early prime age anymore. He is but in the middle of his prime age to the late age. It'll still be a fun matchup. I still think Moraes could be a top 5 in the flyweight, and especially because right now flyweight is on a golden age, right? This is the best era for the flyweight. If Moraes is able to beat Mohamed Mokaev, get into the UFC, boom, or even both of them get signed back to the UFC. That's 10 flyweights that could be champions. I mean, what an era is going on with the flyweights. After pretty much years of struggling to pull momentum, flyweights is coming to a great age. And I like this fight. But the one thing I did want to talk about is the comparison between that weekend and the UFC. Obviously, this is going to be on May 16th, Saturday, the weekend after Sean Strickland versus Hamza. My bad. Arnold Allen versus Costa. That's a great fight. That's a really great fight. But is it enough to overpower Netflix? And I'm going to say this. No. This is probably the first time ever, which is early signs. This is how things start to build up. That UFC will lose in an MMA weekend. There were some weekends, obviously, like the UFC Noche, when Canelo fights, or Independence Day or Mexico. They don't always win those. Because, come on, it's just it's a boxing, MMA. Boxing, when Canelo fights, is a big, prominent deal. You have an entire country, which UFC has been trying to hit that market. But unfortunately, the Mexican fighters are not them. Obviously, they've been doing boxing for a lot longer. But when it comes to UFC, MMA in general, they just don't have elite wrestling. They don't have elite grappling. Their striking are decent, right? But I'm getting carried myself away with this, so I do apologize. Because my main focus is trying to say is this. the UFC fight night for that same weekend against Netflix, this is the first time they're getting mocked. If they don't continue to try to build up the better fights or fight nights or continuing going around the world, Netflix might pick up those following weekends after the number cards, which I think this is a good sign. This is a good thing because it forces one that Hunter Shelby, Dana White, and the promotion be like, hey, we got some real competition. All right, this is not PFL. This is not Bellator. This is not an industry where you could just go out there and buy them out. They got money. All right, and they got money to waste. You got to understand this. Netflix, this promotion, whatever, they could lose money on this and still crush other competition. So I like this. I like this because it brings out one, fighters getting a better opportunity to get money, and two, the fans get, hey, you want us to stick to watching you? We want to see exciting fights. We want to see the fights that we are asking for. We want to see the Sean O'Malley versus Corey Sandhagen. We want to see Volk fight against the number one contender. We want to see these fights that you put in together where rightfully matchups are earned. All right. And you go back to the cities. There's so many venues out there. All right. Like the Seattle. Good. But why do you have Manel Kape versus Hiroshima not in Japan? And I did butcher his name. I do apologize for that. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to make a video about that too. But today I just wanted to discuss about that. And hey, look, this is a bright future for MMA. I really do think this is a good sign. And I hope it becomes a good sign. All right. Better competition, more options for us, the viewerships, and better money opportunity for the fighters and their careers. It doesn't have to be all monopolized under one wing. All right. Again, this is an MMA channel. This is not a UFC channel. I will always be prominent for the MMA world and the fighters. And if that means like if UFC dies, but there's an opportunity where fighters make more money, make better matchups, then that's a good sign. It is evolution. It's called change. But I'm also be extremely happy too if UFC said like, you know what? We have been on autopilot mode. Let's get back on the horse and start pushing more and more. All right, these past 5 years, 6 years since COVID has not been great. But we still have the other half of the decade to prove that why we're on the top. But thank you for watching this video, and I'll see y'all next time.